Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm your host for the day, Sam Bash, and I've returned to review the next installment of the Marvel Cinematic Universe Phase 1 films, Thor. Yay! Released in 2011, this was Marvel's first dabble with the cosmic side of their cinematic playground, and I'm gonna be honest, it doesn't hold up. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be a bummer, but it doesn't. But anyways, today I'm not here to review the film. I'm here to point out every single Easter egg, hidden reference that I could possibly find for your enjoyment. What did director Kenneth Branagh and the Marvel team hide in this film? Oh, we're just gonna have to wait and see. But first, here's your spoiler warning for the Thor trilogy. Weird that we've made it through 3 of those films. The Thor comics, the MCU in general, everything else in the universe just to be safe. Let us begin with our favorite Easter eggs, or excuse me, my favorite Easter eggs, comic book teasers. And to kick that off, here's Odin growling at Loki for some reason. The best part of the movie, I audibly laughed so loud my roommates had to come and ask what I was watching. First up, Thor, the name of the movie, our main character. His first appearance in Marvel Comics was in Journey into Mystery number 83 in 1962. He's very similar to his Norse counterpart in a way, if not really at all, except for the hammer. Even the hammer is a little bit different. Don't worry, I'll get to that in just a little bit. But in the comics, originally he was human, going by the name Donald Blake. Little spoilers, we'll get to him in a little bit. Donald found himself a little stick that when he'd bang it on the ground, he'd turn into the god of thunder himself with the hammer and everything. You actually get a tease of this in Ragnarok. Again, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm very excited. But something very exciting, you get the actual Thor-accurate comic costume right here in his debut appearance in the film. Oh boy, I'm a big fan of that little helmet, but I understand why it never showed up again. It looks heavy as hell. H-E-L. Little Thor joke. But the first character we actually meet in this film is Jane Foster. Ooh, she plays a big part in the comics. Her first appearance, though, was in Journey into Mystery number 84, just after Thor's appearance, and she's been a love interest and maybe sometimes a hero, and now currently in the comics, she's Thor, and honestly, I'm a big fan of Jane Foster Thor. I think she's really cool. I think her story is really interesting. And Natalie Portman playing Jane Foster wasn't amazing, but wasn't awful. Let's be fair to her, guys. Come on. And then we meet Mr. Eric Selvik. Excuse me, Dr. Eric Selvik. Let's show some respect. Originally, he was created for just this movie, but he was added into the main Marvel comic universe during Avengers Standoff. It was an event a few years ago, and then he was promptly killed off. Oops. Then we get our awesome backstory. Very Transformers-esque here. Makes sense because it was made by Paramount, the same company that makes Transformers. We meet King Laufey, and originally he is in Norse mythology, but his comic book counterpart is more true to this movie, so let's focus on him. His original appearance was in Journey into Mystery number 112 in 1965, and same with all the Frost Giants as well. They are a little bit different from the mythology version of the Frost Giants, but they did a pretty good job of adapting the comic book version of them into this movie. We also see Jotunheim, or Jotunheim. It's Jotunheim, that's how you're supposed to pronounce it. Home of the Frost Giants, being one of the 3 realms we visit in this movie. The other 2 being Asgard, the home of the Asgardians, thank you so much. And also Midgard, which is Earth. Very cool. The other 6 realms being, bear with me, I tried my best. I am not going to pronounce these great, but I'm gonna do my best. Here we go. First up, Muspelheim, which is the home of Surtur. Alfheim, which is the home of the Light Elves, which we haven't really met in these movies. Vanaheim, which there's not too much info on there. Niflheim, home of Hela, which is hell. Then Svartalfheim, home of the Dark Elves. You can go ahead and kill me in the comments about that one. That's where Malekith comes from. And then Nidalvir, home of the Dwarves. Oh boy, I butchered those, but you can just read them on the screen. Just don't hate me too much. I tried my best. I'm trying to teach you guys something. But next up, let's give a shout out to Odin, whose first appearance in Marvel Comics was Journey into Mystery number 85 in 1962. I love the headpiece they choose to use for him. It's very similar to his Norse mythology look, which is sometimes, ram's heads or, get the antlers. Also worth mentioning, his spear, Gungnir, is very cool in this movie. I like the way it was used, but more on that in a little bit. We're then introduced to Frigga, Thor's mother in the comics, but actually mythology, it's more of his stepmother. But anyways, let's focus on the comic book part, your favorite part. Her first appearance was in Journey into Mystery number 92 in 1963. She doesn't get too much to do in this movie, but everybody loves Rene Russo, so give her some love in the comments. Next, we meet Sif, who in mythology is actually Thor's wife, well, eventually, but in the comics, she's usually just his friend. Her first appearance was in Journey into Mystery number 102 in 1964. We even get to see some of her awesome sword action when they're on Jotunheim fighting the Frost Giants. It's very cool. We then meet the Warriors 3, who are original creations for the Thor comics. They're actually not in the mythology whatsoever, but we should still give them some love. We see Fandral, played by Josh Dallas. Only in this movie, though. Zachary Levi takes over that role in the next 2 movies, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Also, when they're fighting the Frost Giants, you see his signature weapon, the little sword. Big fan of that. We also see Hogun, played by Tatanabu Asano. He has his mace, which is always so cool. Also, he gets a very cool fight in Ragnarok, which I'm very excited to talk about later. And then we have Volstagg, played by Ray Stevenson, who also played the Punisher in that weird Punisher sequel that most people didn't watch, but it is very violent if you're into that. Also, we get to see him using his axe, and we still get a joke. There were a few scenes of Volstagg cut in this movie, but we still get a scene of him eating a bunch because this is what he looks like in the comics. He's going to tell me. And then we meet everyone's favorite villain, Loki. You get him in his signature helmet as well. And fun fact, in mythology, he's not really a villain. He's just a trickster. But in the comics, of course, he is a big old villain. And his first appearance was in Journey into Mystery number 85. You notice I've said Journey into Mystery many times. Don't worry, it's going to come back in a very cool way. Just stick with me. It's very cool. You see his signature small daggers. You get this snake imagery right here, which they joked about in Ragnarok. His use of projections is always going to be cool, which we see again in Avengers and many other movies. And you also see him suggesting Selvik at the very end of the film. Now that never comes back again in the movies, but that is from the comics, which is very cool. Next, we get to see the weapons vault of Asgard, which is very cool. And there are a lot of Easter eggs hidden here, so bear with me because there's some cool stuff I'm about to mention for you. First up, Mjolnir. We gotta, of course, mention Thor's signature hammer because there's a lot of fun Easter eggs on the hammer, which I think you guys probably missed. But let's talk about its origins. In the movie, they mentioned that it was crafted inside of a dying star, which is not in mythology or actually in the comics either. Actually, in the comics, the origin was that it was crafted by the dwarves out of Uru, which is this really strong material. But recently, they kind of changed it a little bit to be this housing for an evil, sentient lightning storm that was destroying the universe. I kind of like that one, I'm going to be honest. But whatever you guys like, let me know your favorite origin in the comments down below. We then see the Eternal Flame, which belonged to Surtur, which was stolen by Odin, then brought back to the vault. Anyways, you can check all this out in our Ragnarok breakdown on this channel. Next, we see the Casket of Ancient Winters, which is one of the MacGuffins of this Thor film. This actually does pop up in the Thor comics. Actually, during the Ragnarok event is what actually comes before Ragnarok. They use it to freeze over the entire realm. It's very scary. Then we get into the stuff that we don't quite recognize. Let's focus on this eye first up. This has never been confirmed, but for the most part, most fans have figured out that this is Warlock's eye, which is a weapon of Harokin, one of Thor's villains back in the day. And then we get this orb in the background, which again has not been confirmed, but most people are able to figure out that this might be the Orb of Agamotto. It's a blue orb, and it might be a piece of the magic that Doctor Strange could use in the future, but since Ragnarok kind of blew up all of Asgard, don't know if we can really get our hands on that anymore. But my favorite little Easter egg is this piece of rock right here. Now, there's a few theories as what this could be, but for the most part, it's going to be a tablet of some kind. Some people have thought that it's maybe the Tablet of Life, which, you know, brings life or bestows power onto people, or the Tablet of Death, which, you know, kills people, or of Chaos and Order, which would be a fun nod to the cosmic side of Marvel. But again, who knows since it all blew up. Oh, and don't worry, guys, I'm never gonna miss this one. We do get a hint of the Infinity Gauntlet with all the Infinity Gems in the background for just a second. Even watching this film, I still missed this. I had to rewind it a couple times to find this little hint, but eventually in Ragnarok, they proved that this is fake, so it doesn't really hold any water. But moving on, the Frost Giant sneaking into the vault, actually this was replicated most recently in the Marvel Legacy event, so it doesn't really have any, you know, bearing on this movie. I just found that the comics recreated this scene from the first Thor movie. We then get the crowning of Thor as King of Asgard, which does happen in the comics sometimes in the future. Author Jason Aaron actually wrote a very cool run where current Thor teams up with future King Thor and past, you know, adolescent Thor. It's a very good run. I highly recommend you check it out. But moving forward, we then meet the Destroyer. Ooh, he's the main baddish weapon man of this movie. Oh no. He actually doesn't appear in any of the mythology, shocker, but he did make his first appearance in Marvel Comics in Journey into Mystery number 118, doing the same thing he does in this movie, fight Thor. We then meet everyone's favorite character, Heimdall, played by Idris Elba from the comics, and he is also in mythology as the gatekeeper of the Bifrost. His first comic appearance was in Journey into Mystery number 85. Man, I kind of wish he showed up more in the Avengers films, but might be too late. But speaking of the Bifrost, this is also in mythology and in the comics. This is actually the rainbow bridge that helped Asgardians get to Earth and back and forth and so on, but in the comics they use it as just a general transportation to anywhere in the 9 realms. And also it's worth mentioning, one very sleuthy internet person was able to figure out that this writing here on Thor's hammer actually ties it back to the comic version of Mjolnir. Now in the comics on Mjolnir, it's written, "Whosoever holds this hammer, if he be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor." In the movie, if you actually read around the top of the hammer, it reads, when translated, "He who holds this hammer commands the lightning and the storm." That's a very fun Easter egg. Thank you so much, nice internet person. Then scooting forward again to the hammer falling to Earth, this crater that the hammer's in, it kind of seems similar to the Civil War comics that everyone's a big fan of over at Marvel. Originally, the hammer just crash landed in the middle of America, and then somebody else picks it up. I don't want to spoil Civil War if you guys want to go read it. It's a very crazy comic. But then scooting forward, coming back to pay off that Journey into Mystery line that I repeated over and over again, if you check this poster in this town that Thor and Jane Foster and the whole crew are hanging out in, you'll see this little advertisement reading Land of Enchantment, Journey into Mystery. That's the first appearance of Thor. Ooh, cool, it comes back around, very cool. cool. Then scooting forward to when Thor's trying on his mortal clothes, you'll see this name tag stuck to him. It's a very obvious Easter egg to Donald Blake, the name I mentioned earlier, as the man who originally took up the mantle of Thor in the comics. Actually, it's pretty fun to mention that Donald Blake originally was a human that could transform into the god Thor, and then that was kind of retconned that Donald Blake was Thor, very cool, and he had just lost his memory because Odin was trying to teach him a lesson. Sound familiar? Yes, it's the plot of this entire film. Then scooting forward to Odin resting, recharging. Well, actually, this is the Odin sleep, which they mentioned in the movie, but in the comics, this is a device that is used to recharge the Odin force within Odin. It's a magical force that he named himself that gives him his power, the Odin force. Anyways, moving forward to an Avengers tease. Check out this clip. It's so dumb that he reaches for a gun and then reaches for the bow and arrow. But hey, Hawkeye, his very first appearance in the MCU. Fun fact, he actually doesn't appear with Thor in his first appearance. He appears in Tales of Suspense number 57, originally as a villain, and then does his little redemption arc when he becomes a part of the Avengers with Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, and Captain America. But hey, he does look very spooky in this. He looks kind of like a villain in this. Now, I did want to mention Thor being unworthy of the hammer is actually a very big plot point of his current comic run of Odin's son, not Jane Foster as Thor, but actual Odin's son's walking around with a giant axe and he's not able to pick up the hammer anymore. What could that mean? Just go read the comics, it's very cool. But again, this has happened many different times in the comics. I'm just saying the current run is very interesting. Now let's move forward to Thor teaching Jane about Yggdrasil, the world tree, which is the mythological tree that connects all the 9 realms in the cosmos. I love the visualization of this tree in this movie because you can kind of see it built together out of all the constellations in the cosmos and the different gaseous bodies out there in space. It's one of the most beautiful parts of this movie. But then switching forward to the end credits scene, we get the tease of Nick Fury and Eric Selvik talking, looking at this cosmic cube or the Tesseract, and you see Loki suggesting things to Selvik so he can get involved with this project. Project, you say? Well, in Avengers, we actually find out that this facility is Project Pegasus, which in the comics is a facility they use to actually monitor the multiverse, to travel to other universes, which is very fun. It's a bummer that, spoilers, in Avengers, this entire facility blows up. But it does make sense since the Tesseract ends up being the Space Stone, which opens portals to other places in space. For traveling, it's not the same, but hey, we're pretty close. But before we knew this was a Tesseract or a Space Stone hiding as a Tesseract, we all thought this was a cosmic cube, which is a big part of Marvel Comics. And it actually made its first appearance in Tales of Suspense number 89, and it was a wish-granting cube. It could alter reality and make anything you'd want. Ooh, very cool. Now moving on to MCU Easter eggs, starting with the Marvel logo. I really miss this flip book. I know all of the ones we've gotten after this are still pretty cool, but this one just has a special place in my heart. Also, notice all the Dutch angles in this film, because if you watch the after credit scene in Iron Man 2, which was shot by the director of Thor, Kenneth Branagh, he has the same Dutch angles in it. There's just a few too many in here. I'm gonna be honest, it's a little much. And then scooting forward to our flashback once again, you see that this town in Norway is Holmesburg. Try my best to pronounce that correctly. This is actually the same town that appears in Captain America when the Red Skull goes looking for the Tesseract. Very cool, but again, we'll talk about that next week. Also, it's worth mentioning that Odin seems to have lost the same eye that Thor did in Ragnarok. Woohoo, very cool. Then moving forward again to Thor almost becoming king. Notice that this is the throne room, the same throne that we see in the other 2 Thor movies, and that's always inside of a giant hall. But here, it's totally outside, like 100%, so something must have changed. Somebody didn't agree with somebody, so they had to make it inside. You also get a very big tease of the Bifrost being the main weapon of this movie when Heimdall is explaining what the Bifrost can do right here.
To leave the bridge open would unleash the full power of the Bifrost and destroy Jotunheim with you upon it.
Also, I want to point something out. In The Incredible Hulk and in Iron Man 2, you get these shots of soldiers firing Gatling guns into like living areas for people, like apartment buildings or giant crowds, and you're just like, oh, that's kind of cool, but aren't people dying? Same thing here when Thor does that giant lightning strike. It's an awesome moment, but then just thousands upon thousands of frost giants are dying. I know they're the bad guys, but it's just like, you start to question it when you age up just a little bit. But anyways, here's my favorite part of the movie right here. Odin growling at Loki is the best part of almost any Marvel movie I could possibly think of. I know it's so stupid, but I don't care. Moving on. Ooh, here's that Coulson shot we got from Iron Man 2 saying, yes, sir, we found it. But also make sure you keep an eye on all of these random people who are trying to lift Thor's hammer. I'll come back to them in just a little bit. Here's the Easter eggs you want. You hear Selvik say this right here.
I knew the scientist, the pioneer in gamma radiation.
Ooh, pioneer in gamma radiation. He's obviously mentioning Bruce Banner or Betty Ross, who were working on a gamma radiation project just a little bit before this movie takes place. Then moving on to the S.H.I.E.L.D. base, I wanted to give a shout out to this actor right here. He's made an appearance in many different Marvel properties, specifically Winter Soldier and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. the TV show. This is Sitwell. Actually, I'm a big fan of him because in the comics, he ends up dying, kind of like he does in Captain America, Winter Soldier, but then he comes back as a zombie. And coming to the end of the movie, we get a hint to the secret paths between worlds right here.
There are secret paths between the worlds to which even you, with all your gifts, are blind.
Of course, they probably had to add this, or maybe it was already in the script, but so that it made sense why Thor could come to Earth for the Avengers films. It just works, you know? But really quick, guys, to end this video, I wanted to point out some fun pop culture references that I was able to catch when I was watching this movie, like how the intro, I mentioned this before, has a Transformers feel to it. I'll play some Optimus opening dialogue.
Some wanted it for good, others for evil.
Odin's opening dialogue.
From a realm of cold and darkness came the frost giants.
It was both made by Paramount, so it kind of makes sense that they were like, you need this same kind of inflection. But moving forward, look at this guy who's trying to pick up the hammer. He's in the red truck. He seems important, right? The camera's spending way too much time on him. Usually in movies and TV shows, that means they're important because this man is J. Michael Straczynski, who is a writer over at Marvel, specifically for Thor and Spider-Man. He's also very famous, so I was very excited to see him in this movie. And then we see the man himself, Walt Simonson, the creator of Beta Ray Bill, Throg, everything you love about Thor. He's sitting at the table right here. Check him out. And finally, guys, the last two little bits I want to leave you with is, of course, the Stanley Cameo. He's the one trying to use his truck to haul Mjolnir out of the crater. It don't work. And finally, I want to say this movie has the best Thor wig of every other Thor wig we've seen in every other Marvel movie. I mean, sometimes it looks real rough, and in this, it works. But hey, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know which of these was your favorite little Easter egg. Let me know what I possibly missed. You can follow me on Twitter @SamBasher or @OnlyStupidAnswers. You can have those vowels from stupid. Make sure you like this video, comment down below, share with your friends, and subscribe for more breakdowns. Make sure you check out New Rockstars News every weekend. We talk about all the up-to-date and current nerdy news. I know you guys are a big fan of that, and I'll see you guys next time.